What is good, my analysts, and congratulations for falling for the clickbait. This is Daisy May, the new puppy, and I'm actually going to let her go play because she's more of a Python girl anyways. And we're going to jump into episode 11 of Analyzing PowerShell Payloads. Mwah! Okay, so we're back. Significantly less adorable without the puppy, but I don't think she's really gonna be able to help us here. So this will be episode 11. I found this payload actually trolling around VirusTotal looking for new things that I haven't seen before, and I stumbled across this one, and I thought this would be a great example payload to go through to introduce the debugging tools in PowerShell, which I understand a lot of this stuff could be done in sandboxes, but we're not cowards, and I think it's really important to be able to do this manually. As you come across stuff in the field, sometimes you won't have access to a sandbox, or maybe for some reason there's a lot of anti-debugging stuff in there and it's just not detonating properly, and so you need to do some manual analysis. I actually don't know what at the end of this payload is. I found it in a phishing document, and it was just a heavily obfuscated PowerShell script, and I thought, yeah, this is a good time to introduce debugging as a new skill. So let me share my screen into our analysis machine and pop open episode 11, and you'll see that there's just a bunch of gobbledygook in here. And usually when you see stuff like this, a lot of data that is obfuscated being passed as strings to different functions. In my experience, typically what this means is that some of these functions are probably just going to be doing like string replaces, or there's some sort of function. Hold on, I'm gonna grab my glasses to go full nerd mode, where either some of these functions will be a replacement for actual PowerShell commands like invoke expression or download string or something along that, or they're taking the obfuscations actually just tucked into the text, and they'll do rip and replace of characters and run them through these functions. And then as we step through this, you'll see that it's pretty easy to find out what's going on. And one of the things you can do normally, actually, let me close this out. Ooh. Well, like I said, we do this live. You're going to see all my mistakes. Let me open this back up just so we'll start with a fresh session, because I was looking at another payload before this and I don't want anything to be messed up, right? One of the things you can do when you have something like this is you could go through and try to like do a find on things like IEX or invoke expression. I'm sure it's in there like this, right? And you could comment some of this out if you wanted to protect your analysis machine from like putting any malware on there. And you just like take all of these out, comment them out or whatever, and go ahead and run it. And then you could do something like get variable, where a lot of this stuff, like you could see, this is the object that they're adding to. But a lot of these things are like variables where they're reading some sort of string data in, and you could just run this through and then run something like get variable and find a lot of these things that will be deobfuscated automatically. And that's the quick and dirty way to do it. But you probably, I think running through the debugger is a little bit cleaner, and it helps you understand what actually these payloads are doing at their heart, rather than just being able to extract the tactical info. Not that there's anything wrong with like quick and dirty methods to get the stuff that you need, especially if you're on an IR. So the first kind of trick that I'll show you here is, and I don't know if there is a way like to do a control all and then add a breakpoint on every line like that. Yeah, see, I don't think that there's a way to do this in PowerShell where you could just like, hey, do a breakpoint on every line. So I just use this little kind of one-liner here, which is very handy. And it's just a for loop, right? So it's going to say for every line in this script, set a breakpoint on the line. And so we can step through this line by line and pull out information as we need. And this is a really good way to get comfortable with the debugger and then see what we can use with these kind of payloads. Specifically, you're going to want to, as soon as you start seeing a bunch of string gobbledygook that's being passed to function, this is a great indicator that you should use the debugger, because usually what we'll be able to see is like this variable or one of these ones as we go through is probably going to contain the deobfuscated text, whatever this thing turns into. And we can do that really quick. So we're just going to run that, and you'll see once it gets debugged or it sets a breakpoint, they'll turn like this this red color. And then all we're going to do next is go up to debug and then hit run continue, or you can do F5 if you're fancy. And F10 will step through, and then F9 will toggle your breakpoint. Shift F11, I think, will step into a function. But we can just use F10. And all F10 is going to do is just take us line by line. So the first thing we do, which makes sense, we know that from all the other ones. Whenever you see a function, you start at the bottom. The first thing that happens is it calls this function THPD1, which means nothing to us, but I'm sure we'll be able to figure it out. And then we're gonna hit F10. He's like, oh, well, the first thing that this function does is call another function. So they're probably just jumping around to try to, hide some of the stuff for our analysis. So we'll jump into that function. We'll see, okay, well, we have the first thing here. It's setting a variable to app data. Okay, so it's probably gonna run something out of the app data environmental variable. And we can show you exactly what I mean. So as we go through this, one of the handy things here is we'll see that QAG variable has been set now to that. Be like, oh, okay. So now I can do that. And each line, as we go through this, we're going to see how we'll be able to step through it to pull out the information and figure out what this is doing, even though this is not human readable at all. But all of the bits, I bet, to deobfuscate this are actually in the script, and it's probably some sort of dropper to drop something else. So in this next line, we see that there's this GQWFM crap function, and it's reading a string value into that. And that's a huge, huge indicator that I bet that this function is some sort of decoder function. It's going to do something like, going to take the ASCII character value and find a map, and then it will replace this, and it will be just some human readable string. Well, let's jump into it. That's why we do this. So we'll go ahead and F10 to step into it. And look, okay, so it's setting just a variable to blank. So it's reset this, another indicator. This is going to be used over and over again as some sort of decoding function. And it read that string value into this Y. So it says, okay, on this next line, it's saying whatever the length of this string is, we're going to set that because it looks like it's going to loop through that as we predicted. It's some sort of decoder function. So it's going to say, hey, for each character in whatever string is patched to, we're going to use the function. It looks like, okay, yep, all right. So if you can't read this right off the bat, what it's doing is exactly as we thought. It's decoding this, and this saying it's going to loop through every character in this variable, and that was some string or whatever. We can find that right now, actually. If we just say, give me the contents of YAE3 and say, okay, so take for every character in here, loop through, and while it's less than the length, count up and then say, if whatever the third character is, add it to this object. Okay, so it's taking every third character basically and reading that into QR B2R5CEW, whatever this is, and saying if every third character add that. So this, we can say, look, PAH, H will be added, TZO, O will be added, GQT, T will be added. So that's HOT. I'll do it right here. HXE, E will be added. MLL, hotel, MYL, and then TL, hotel with 2 L's. Let's see. Let's see if I got that right. And we'll see that it's going to loop. Oh, this is going to be painful. The next thing, the first thing we're going to do after we test this is we're going to disable debugging on this function once we figure out what it is. Let me loop through here. All I'm doing is hitting F10 and letting it loop through each one of these characters just to make sure that we're not missing anything. Skip it. not that many characters. So, okay. Oop. Okay. So basically we should see the string you are hotel. Oh, probably because it starts at 0 and I'm dumb. Okay. So yeah, so it takes the third letter from every string, adds it to that variable, and that's what it's returning. So as we thought, it's some sort of decoder. Let's stop the debugger, and we're going to toggle. We're going to take away this breakpoints on this because we don't want to run through that loop every single time. All we need to know is if we see GQFMP5H RSHI, whatever this is. Actually, you know what we'll do? Let's just rename this to replace. Start at the top here and say replace in script. We're going to say every time we see this, let's call this replaced or grab third letter. Match the whole word and replace all. So now we should see that our function is now called grab third letter, and we can kind of just assume that that's what it does without looping through it. All right, so let's go into the debug again. Okay, yep, okay, and then we go here and into our function. It's gonna say grab that third letter, step around that because we've disabled that. So now we should be able to say SQM is gonna be hotel. Okay, cool. So now we have this new thing where it says this crap is calling this function EMM0BNG and saying pass two parameters, which is QAG, which we already know is app data, and hotel. Okay. So I bet it's calling some sort of path here, and let's see what it's doing. Okay. It calls it grab third letter. So for this one, let's see. SYAH. Ah, okay. So we're doing more kind of like, and this, I hopefully you guys can see why we step through this and why it makes it so valuable. So this function creates a command, which is join path with two objects, one being app data and the other being hotel. So this is probably going to create a new folder in that location. Let's go ahead and just watch this. This is my analysis machine, so we can blow it up anytime we want. Let's see if that's what actually happens. So nothing's been created in there yet, but we have this KASVZGI whatever function that it's going to call, and it's going to call with SYAC, which is the join path with our join path, our two variables, which is app data and hotel. So creating a new path that is C users, Dwyer, app data, roaming, hotel. And let's jump into that KAZ. And basically that's just, okay. All right. Okay, so we basically, this creates a new path. This is a replacement for invoke expression because this is taking whatever command gets passed to it as the parameter and running invoke expression and returning whether or not it was successful. So let's go ahead and stop the debugger again. Let's toggle breakpoints on this because we're not, we know what they do. And we're going to do the same thing again. So we're going to take EMM this, copy, is it 164? And all we're going to do is do a find and replace again. And what we're going to do is we're going to call that the join path function. We'll replace all those just so we don't have to go into that every single time. And then what we'll do this, same thing. We'll take that KAS so we'll know what it's doing without having to, actually watch it go. And we're going to say this is the IEX function. Place off. Okay. And we've toggled off those breakpoints, so we don't have to run through that again. Save it off. And let's go ahead and jump through it. Okay, F10. We know this. We know this. We know this. We say, okay, so we're going to call join path. And we should have JYA, should be C users. Hell, if it went through there, it should have run invoke expression. Maybe it calls it next. Okay. Oh, here we go. It's calling it here. So if we say VDL, yep, okay. Yep, okay. So it did. What we saw is that it's created, it's saying new item path is the path that we created with the join path function, new directory, and we've read, yeah, this JY was a result of the join path function and invoke expression. So it created this object, and now it's going to call new path with that variable. So let's go, let it do its thing. And if this all worked, see, now we have hotel in here as a directory. Okay, so we can say, okay, it's going to do it again. Now it's doing the same thing, and we have join path on that. And what does that say? Okay. And it's checking, it's basically saying the path, everything inside of hotel. And let's read what's RVD. Okay, same thing. Okay. VDL. So VDL/F. VDL, oops, sorry. VDL is remove item. Okay. So this, grab the third letter, 1, 2, 3, R, 1, 2, 3, I. Okay, so remove item, anything that's in that folder, delete it. And then it's calling our invoke expression. So it's basically making sure that folder is empty, just in case someone has a hotel directory in there, or maybe it runs in a loop. Okay, so let's step through that again. So that's going to make sure that the folder is empty. And now we have for JZ, which we haven't, oh, it sets it to 0, 5. So it's going to loop through this 5 times. And we're going to do a decode, grab third letter on these 2 objects. So let's go ahead and do that and read what they say. LG. Bob's Cave. Wow, that's interesting. I've seen Bob's Cave as a string before in other payloads. I wonder if that's like a thing with a malware family. And a $. Okay. We'll step through that. And what is TPS? So this is just calling a function, saying BVL is going to be the function. What does this do? All right. We have a lot of grab third letter, PNY. Okay. So it's going to do some sort of downloading thing here, probably. Let's go ahead and step through. We're doing a replace again. So this isn't doing anything other than setting variables with the decoded. Okay, there's our C2 to download our payload probably. And step over this. PNY now is, okay, and there's our cradle. So here's our download cradle. So it's going to use download string to download the contents of this, wherever that is. And then it's going to run that as invoke expression. We should have that. And this is my analysis machine. We can blow this thing up. So I'm just going to go ahead and download. It isn't doing anything but downloading a string anyway. So even if it's like a virus or anything, it's not executing it. We'll step through that. So now we should see BVL is something. And it's another encoded payload. Let's just go ahead and we're going to do BVL or store that and evil second stage dot text. Let's just save that off. Yeah, just in case. So we have it. So and should we jump in and take a look at what that actually does? No, we're gonna stay on path. So we know that there's another encoded PowerShell payload just by looking at that. That's definitely base 64. So we'll have to do another stage of this. That's fine. And then it's doing a split on the pound sign, right? Because wasn't UFK a pound and new line? So maybe this is like I don't know, unless that base 64 data had a bunch of his SJ. It's gonna split on a pound, and I don't think there was a pound in there. At least I didn't see it. But let's step over and see if it's anything different. SJ. No, it's basically the same thing. Okay. So this should just be one when we step over that, right? So MTR one, yeah, because it didn't need to split it at all. So maybe that is modular and this thing could be used for multiple different things and they could split commands up by putting a pound symbol in there or hashtag, I guess. Yeah, okay. In this case, it doesn't matter. So we're just going to go through. We have another for loop here and it's saying, well, it's less than the count, which is 1. So we don't have to worry about commenting this out because it doesn't look like we're going to loop through many times. But this is calling another function. So this is saying this function with SJ as a parameter and YZX 0 and LG Bob's Cave. So it is calling that function with those 3 parameters set. And we're going to dive into there. And we have those 3 in there. And this is setting ISC. Okay, because there's 1. Yeah, there's only 1 thing in there. And it's at the 0. So I guess it's meant to pass and take arrays as well if it needs to do multiple different commands or whatever it's going to do after here. LHD is Bob's Cave. And okay, so it's making it a string if it has to, and then we have a we have a replace function on TL. So if that is, if it grabs every letter, it's going to be dot DXT, right? Let's see. Go through that and see what DG. Bob's Cave .txt. Bob's Cave 0.txt. Okay. And then it's going to do the join path. So it's probably going to, okay, P. All right. So let's see if it created that. Yeah, but we haven't seen it. I guess that's where it's going to store some data. And it's going to call this FYMK with our 2 parameters, which is this path. This OKP is this, and ISC, which is our second stager. Okay. So let's go ahead in here. And it looks like we do a little decode. So let's step over that and find out what that is. So add content. Okay. So this function is going to take these 2 parameters. One is a file name and what is content. And what it's going to do is going to create a file called bobscave0.txt and add the content of our second stage base64 as text to that. That's what it's going to do. So if we do that, we should see, yay, look at this guy. It's almost like I know what I'm talking about sometimes. All right, so it's going to read the content of that base64 in there. And let's keep on going. At the end of that function, and it does that once because there's only one split. And now it's going to say, we're going to call another function, and it's got two parameters as LG, just Bob's Cave, and MTR1. Okay. It's going to call another function, which is this, which is a bunch of new line, system environment new line. Okay. We're going to do a lot of decoding here, but what it created a new object. I'll step over this. All right. Let's see what hook, whatever that says, on error resume next. That's going to be some VB script, I'm guessing. But all it's doing, see this plus equal, it means it's adding to this. So it created a new object, which is right now it's just on error resume. So this is going to prediction time, but I think what this is, all these grab 3-letter functions are all just going to add content to, yeah, okay. It's just going to build a VB script, I guess. So I'm going to step over all of this and let it do a thing because we've already seen what grab the 3rd-letter function does. And what is JIFE1? Okay. And get to return. What we're going to do is just read it out. It should be a, yeah, okay. So this is, yeah, okay. So it's going to run a shell command, which is PowerShell. Here's our loader file, Bob's Cave. Okay. And this is our, okay. So all this is going to do is basically read the content of this file and run it as a PowerShell command. By doing, it's going to read the content of that to read to this variable and then run invoke expression on that data. So, okay. But I don't know what it's doing with VB scripts yet, but you know, we'll keep on, maybe that's how it persists. Maybe it persists on VB scripts instead of having a PowerShell script, like a PS1 file, maybe it does it with that. But okay, we're moving on through TB. And there's our completed, there's our VB script that is loaded into a variable. And now we're doing this again. We have new thing setting app data, and it's saying grab 3rd letter on here. What does EJK? Get file, random file name. Okay. So it is going to generate a random file name. Then it's going to, yep, I was right. Dude, sick. I didn't even plan that. Okay, so I bet that what we're doing right here is that this function is going to create a VB script that is going to run as a startup program, and they're going to take that content of that VB, you know, the VB code that we just created that launches the PowerShell stuff. They're going to write it to the startup programs folder, and that'll be the persistence function. So if we do this, go to here, we should see, yep. So let's go ahead and open up another and go back in app data, Microsoft, Windows. Yes, I know I could copy and paste this in there, but I'm a double clicky boy at heart. Startup, and I bet we'll see a this file created in here. Yeah, so we're doing another decode, and let's just see what KL add content, right? And I bet our path is the VB, and the content is the VB code. Yep, nailed it. So let's go ahead and let it do that. It's fine. Yep, and here's our thing. So okay, looks like there's not really any C2 other than the second stage. We still have to jump through that. Does that invoke expression on ETN or VL? Okay, well, we don't want to run that. And then it's going to sleep for 7. And can try it 5 times. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of it. Yeah. Okay, so we know what it's going to do. So it's going to try to do this 5 times, which is try to run this PowerShell code, and it's going to try to run it from persist through the startup program. So let's go ahead and stop this and sleep 7. It would go through here 5 times and then exit out. And this is the beginning function that we had. So this was essentially it. And it would try that, it would sleep for 7 seconds, try this 5 times. Okay. All right. So that's what that did. It downloaded second stage content. And what was it? What did I put that in? Evil second stage. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let's see. Room here. Let's just driver ship it as we always do. What we got? Turns. Base64. Null bytes. Oh, interesting. Okay. Not sure if we've talked about this before. Let's copy this out. We have seen the new object again. Up. And what we have here is an obfuscation type. This drawing.bitmap function means that it can read content from an image. So this is a good obfuscation to get through like firewall filters and things like that, is that you can encode PowerShell commands inside of an image. And you can use this get pixel function. I think Trusted Tech actually had a blog about this not too long ago. But this isn't anything like super new, but it still works. Where you can like host some PowerShell backdoors and things like that on the internet without them getting flagged, because it should be a legitimate picture. So if we pop this up, Yeah, the name of it is shell.png. So clearly they're not trying to hide that too much, but this is gonna probably open up a reverse shell, and the data to launch that shell is encoded in the pixel data. And to get this, you could go through this, you could download, and there's ways to analyze those images to pull that data out. But I'm going to show you that the easiest way to do that is let PowerShell like do all the work for you. And instead of invoking the expression, what we're going to do is we'll just take this out. So we have a new object A. So we should be, yeah, so that worked. Oops, sorry. I didn't get any errors. All we're going to do is just, instead of invoking the expression, we're just going to write the content of whatever was in there. Boop. Take that out. So if we do test equals, let's see if that works. Hey, look at that. We've seen this a billion times. This is the don't kill my cat. And we've got this, and we know exactly what to do. So we'll do test. We'll read that out to third stage evil.txt. And we'll go to our episodes here. We have third stage. Grab this. Put that back into Chef table. And take a look at it, see if we have to do anything funky with it. This is all the same. We've gone through this a million times. I don't have to explain this again. And we've done this exactly before. So it's not doing anything fancy. So it's just doing from base 64 with a XOR of 35. So let's just get rid of this. Do that. Take this off. XOR. We know it's decimal. 35. And there we go. There's our evil IP that's going to establish your shell onto. We could dig into this further, but this is just shell code that's going to open up a reverse shell. Whoever user agent here, it's a clear indicator that it's a reverse shell. So that was awesome. So that's how you can use the debugger to go through a multi-stage PowerShell script where everything is obfuscated. But keep a lookout whenever you see a lot of string data in there being read into variables. That's a great example to a great opportunity to use the debugger and just step through. And all you got to do is be careful of the different invoke command things if you don't want to mess with your analysis box and put malware on it. I don't care. I destroy this box all the time, so it doesn't really matter. But hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you come across anything neat or if you have any hangups on using the debugger, or if you know how to quickly add a breakpoint to every line in a PowerShell script without using a for loop. As always, happy hunting, and I'll see you in the next one.